On this episode of the Minutemen Initiative, we are going to be getting into EDC Part 2. So, second part of our multi-part series, we're going to touch on EDC a lot. Everyday carry is important. It's what we have with us every day. Specifically today, we're talking about training. Actually training with that everyday carry, that firearm that you use, and your overall setup, and then training how you go about your day, whether you're in law enforcement, you're a civilian, whatever you're doing for your job. With us to help us talk about this topic today, we've got Andrew Register of Pride One Tactics. He's a firearms instructor and a fellow member of the industry, so he's got a really cool perspective and a lot of good experience and benefit to add to today's discussion. So we're glad you're here, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
So I just want to say real quick before we start, when we were jumping out of planes, they give out the 1 minute, we'd have to stand up, 30 seconds hook up. And then they would say, check equipment.
Yeah.
Right? Dude, I had no idea what I was doing.
What do you mean?
Like, they would say, check equipment, and I'm staring at the guy in front of me, and I'm just like following the little strap. But like, I'm not, someone who rigs up shoots, so the guy in front of me is just, dude, I say jump, like, it's like, but I'm sure the guy behind me had no idea what he was doing either. Right? What was that call for? like, check equipment. I'm not the guy. Like, I'm an 18-year-old dumb dude. Like, I think it's good. Dude, I say jump.
Dude. It is something that barely covered in training too. Like, it was just something that was like,
dude, that was a check.
All right, you check the equipment.
Well, yeah, it was like, what if that guy in front of me did have an issue? Like, do I get in trouble?
No. They don't know where you are.
Yeah, dude. Like,
well, they do. They have a
check
chalk
equipment.
Order.
Man.
Although I don't know how you guys did it up here in Alaska. So
I mean, I think we had.
I feel like you guys were like way more cowboy than we were.
I don't know if I'd call it cowboy.
Dude, I would just walk out that door all the time. Dude, I wouldn't even care. I'd just walk out, and then whatever way the wind took me, I'd just
fall. Dude, what's funny though is now that you say that, like I consciously remember mindlessly following that the static line and just being like, it's rubber banded up back here.
Yeah, it looks good.
I guess it looks like
Thumbs
what
up.
I think it's supposed to look like.
Jump, kid.
Why don't they go over that with you?
I don't know.
I think you're looking for tethers, right? In the actual strap itself.
I think you're looking for twists, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, now that you said that, I don't think I knew what I was looking for either.
I think it's like fraying in the actual line itself, making sure it doesn't get, it's not snagged on anything.
But it is weird because you get JMPI'd, so it's
like someone else that I think knew what they were doing.
What's happening in the plane? And are the jump masters just going to be like if you're like, hey, we got this guy can't jump. Like,
hey, I think there's something wrong with this guy's shoot.
Actually has happened.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, I had a buddy that got sat down.
Oh,
and it was like legitimate.
Well, I'm really glad that guy was behind him.
Yeah,
and he wasn't in front of you.
Yeah, he got sat down, and they legitimately came back and literally, like, it was crazy, and it was kind of scary to me too because I was in line behind, and he was like, "Hey, jump master, I got something," and the jump master like meanders his way all the way back to like, "Hey, get out of the way!" He's just shoving people out of the way, and he gets back to him, and he looks at it, and he's like, "Good catch," and he just unhooks him and just sits the guy down, and the guy sits there like, thank you, like to the guy. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, did this guy actually check my shoot behind me? Because like, we got one guy that's getting sat down. Like, this is a bad batch, guys. We're gonna cancel this jump.
That's crazy. I don't think I remember anybody ever getting sat down.
Me either, dude. Everyone just fell out that door.
I did. There was a person that refused to jump.
I had a buddy do that
on
as
my
well.
chalks. This was a girl randomly, but
dude, I learned
she was outboard personnel. I was inboard personnel, so they went out. And she just stopped. Like, it was like seventh person or something in the chalk. And she was just like, no.
That was my seat.
No. And they were like, they did the thing where they like sat her down on the tail or whatever.
Did she get in trouble though?
I don't know. I jumped out.
See, the guy that I had that happen to, he unhooked and just sat down.
Yeah,
What a baller.
And
He's like, nah, I'm not doing this.
he did too. And he was like, it was like something to do with how he was JMPI'd. He didn't trust it because he was like, there was something that was going on with the chute that he was like skeptical of.
Oh.
And he noticed it, and he told the JMPI, like the jump master, like, "Hey, I need a new chute." And the guy was like, "No, you're good. You, it's all right. I checked it." And he was like, "Dude, screw this, man." And he just unhooked and sat down. And then they tried to kick him out of the military for it, but then he like took pictures of the chute and stuff, and ended up fighting it. And they were like, "Oh, good call."
Oh, so he was right.
Yeah, he was right.
It was in airborne school when I realized that. Man, I remember my first jump. I even told myself I wasn't going to do this. And I was like, this was ridiculous.
At airborne school?
Like, I'm not jumping out of this plane. But that's when I realized that all it took was another person just hitting me in the butt saying, go, and I would. Like,
Dude, it just autopilot out of
yeah,
there.
dude, you just walk on out.
I have a confession to make about airborne.
Okay.
I never counted to 4,000.
Oh, dude, I had a night jump every time. My eyes was closed every single time.
Dude, what?
Every single
I would
jump
literally
was a night
go,
jump.
1,000. And thankfully my shoe
I'd feel that pushback, and I'd be like, all right, I guess I'm good.
dude. And then the thing is, though, is it just worked every time. So I never like built in the like repetition to actually count to 4,000. I counted to like 2,000, and that was it. And then thankfully it usually opened around 3. I think I was kind of doing it mentally, but definitely not out loud.
I will say that every time that I hit the ground, I was frozen for about a good like 8 seconds. I would just let the chute drag me for a little bit, just be like, I'm on the ground and I don't care. Like, and then I disconnect and everything.
Just have that little moment to like catch up. And
No,
kinda
yeah,
be
just
like,
hit the ground and just be like fine with it, and then just be dragged all over the grass, dirt, snow, whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, every time I hit the ground, it was like probably an injury. So I always hit like a sack of potatoes, dude. It was just like, and just involuntary grunts. Like
Dude,
every single time.
We had this
dude.
guy get knocked out. I don't know who he was. He was just a random guy.
Was he you?
Well, I got knocked out too, and I
Yeah.
jumped, but that's a
gonna
different
say.
story. But we had this guy get knocked out, not on a tarmac or anything like that. Like mine was way worse, but he was getting drugged, and the only reason I'm telling this story is because Register knows the guy that's in the story. So
Good old Q.
Q didn't get knocked out, but he did jump on the guy that was knocked out to stop him, and then he just slapped the crap out of him.
That's cute for you.
multiple times, and he goes, "Wake up, Jewel."
I never understand what he's saying.
He's saying,
guy.
"Wake up, you! Wake up, you!"
Wake up.
That's hilarious.
Q is he's from Peru. He didn't
Yeah.
get to America till he's about 18 years old, and he was a character. And Register went to basic with him, and I
Yeah,
served
man, he
with him,
slept
so-
right next to me.
Yeah,
Now he's a drill sergeant.
Yeah, no.
crushing it.
dude. No one understands what they're saying. What he's saying.
No, he's probably
The most perfect drill sergeant.
What?
It's the most perfect drill sergeant. You can't
Oh
understand.
yeah, dude. He's probably wrecking people. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, Steven already cued you in on it, but we do have Mr. Andrew Register of
Cued
Pride
in.
One Tactics. No pun intended. Yeah, Andrew Register of Pride One Tactics is back with us. His guest appearing. He's gonna have the trilogy, the guest trilogy here.
Man, I'm excited.
We're gonna have him on the next episode. So he's here. So we're like, dude, you want to just get on these episodes with us? And he's
Why
like,
not?
yeah, let's do it. So thanks for coming back.
Of course, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, man. It's good to see you. I've been having a lot of fun with him. Andrew's like a brother to me, so which means I have 2 brothers named Andrew now. So
Yep. Deal with it.
This is weird.
Yep.
Just ran out of names because we have so
Dude.
many siblings.
There's so many Andrews around. Like, what's going on with
Dude,
that?
I've met like 3 since I've been here.
Are they all up here somehow?
Yeah.
Dude, just the full connection. Well, much like in our airborne days when we would have to jump out of planes and every time wonder why I made that contract and why I signed up. Yeah, I thought it'd be cool. No, but a big part of jumping out of airplanes is intentional training. That's a massive part of it. You know, you train repetitively, regularly, and intentionally. Every single jump, we would actually go through the same same old thing.
Pre-jump.
Do PLFs, which is a parachute landing fall. You'd practice jumping off a little platform and not smashing your legs and
You never land that way though.
jump out of a fake airplane fuselage and then just randomly bunny hop. Why did we bunny hop away? What was that?
That was 1,000,
Go,
2,000, 3,000.
Oh, I never counted, so
Yeah,
that's why I didn't understand
Hop
it.
away. This is what we do.
That was like to drill in the fact that you're, I think, pretty sure.
Yeah. Well,
It's like each hop was
they
a
want you to
second.
keep your feet and knees together too.
Yeah.
So it was like, if you just jumped out and like walked away, they'd be like, you know. But so, anyways, this very long-winded and stretch of a segue I'm making from airborne stuff to EDC is that it's important to train. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about training with your everyday carry. So we already talked about this is everyday carry part 2. We were thinking about doing mindset, but we decided for part 2 to do training because, again, I really feel like training is something that, much like handgun, we started EDC. This will be a multi-part series because EDC is a monster of a topic, and it's realistically what we're all doing all the time. Again, if you don't know what EDC means, it's everyday carry, so it's literally just the things you have with you on a day-to-day basis. For most of us, I feel like if you listen to this podcast, it's a good chance that includes a firearm. And if it does, we talked a lot about handgun for EDC in our last EDC podcast. It's called EDC Part 1. It'll be in the description if you missed that one, so check that one out. But we got Andrew with us. Obviously, Steven's sitting over there too. Me and Steven always holding it down. So we're going to be talking about EDC Part 2 and specifically training and how that's super important. And I feel like a lot of people, like we said in the first one, a lot of people kind of get into the EDC mindset and the EDC culture by purchasing a handgun. I think a lot of people unintentionally get into EDC, like they carry a knife or they carry they put a watch on or whatever it is. But I think it's not until they buy that handgun to carry it and they start carrying it every day. It's not until then that I think they're like, okay, I want to start being more intentional about my everyday carry. You know what I mean? Then they start thinking about like, what else do I need to have on me? What are some other good just in case items to carry with me every single day?
One of my favorite things is when people come in and buy a firearm. What do I get next? And then you just got the whole list. You just go through it. This is what you're going to need. You're going to need a home for it. You're going to need all this stuff for it. And then you got to think about the other tools that you're also going to need.
Yeah. So with these tools and with these things you start buying, if you're doing it right, you start going to the range, you start shooting, you start training with your handgun. So we kind of want to talk about things to think about when training, the importance of it, why it's non-negotiable. I think you should, if you carry a handgun every day, you need to train regularly with it. And not only do you need to train regularly, it needs to be your priority. Recently, at least Steven and I, we've been working a lot with our carbines, doing more kind of like, intermediate range to longer range stuff with our carbines, kind of stretching the legs on those platforms, doing more, some more kind of tactics oriented team kind of stuff, which has been awesome. But, it's important to always jump back in and make sure you're making time for, training with what you literally carry every day, which makes it the most likely firearm you're going to have to end up using. Hope you never have to use it, but if you do, it's most likely going to be that handgun. So, it's important to train with it. It's important to, constantly do like dry fire training. So these are kind of the things we're going to start to touch on today. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can't stress enough. It's if you're carrying it, you should definitely be training with it because it's not doing much good to you if you're just carrying it and hoping that. I feel like if you're not training with it, you've come to like some conclusion that you're never going to actually end up having to use it. And then at that point, why are you carrying it?
Yeah.
One of my biggest things I tell all my students is that your handgun and the one that you carry on you will always be your most important firearm that you have in your entire arsenal. It's what you're going to use to either get to your gun safe. It's what you're going to use if you're law enforcement. You're going to need your handgun to get to your rifle. All right. We use our handguns till we can gain our actual primary firearms.
Yep.
The handgun's what's going to save your life. The rifle or shotgun is what you're going to use to fight. And that's how I kind of like tell a lot of my students that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to look at it. And, even from the whole theme of this podcast, it's all based around the Minutemen, kind of mentality. And I think the ultimate, like, modern Minutemen, I guess perspective that we really see starts with the handgun, whether you realize it or not. Even before you start preparing for these other things, like we've talked about it in earlier podcasts. And again, it's kind of what this podcast is built around, is being a modern day Minuteman, being ready at a moment's notice to deal with a threat to you or your family or community. And that really starts with the handgun. I think that's first line for most of us. We're not walking around with body armor on and, our ARs strapped to us all the time. You're going about your day-to-day life with your handgun. So that needs, like you said, that needs to be your training priority, especially for EDC. And to take it a step further, the things you do every day, need to be trained with and trained on, whatever your tools are beyond a handgun. But yeah, those are just, I guess that's just kind of my perspective on it. It is very much a part of this whole concept of being like a modern day Minuteman.
Yeah, and I think that's not just your perspective. I think that's pretty much everyone here right now's perspective, and I think most of our audience would probably even agree. But yeah, I think it's important just to kind of knock out some of the basics, and for people that are newer to this industry or newer to carrying or whatever it may be, I feel like a podcast like this would be really beneficial for them getting started out. And I wish that I could have listened to this when I first started carrying a handgun, honestly, because it would have. I mean, obviously we have a different perspective because we've been around longer and we've seen the industry change the way it has. So it's
right.
We would never have gotten this kind of information back when we first started carrying it, but it's cool that people are able to get it now, I guess.
Yeah.
Regardless, for me, when I'm at the range training, whether it be a rifle or a shotgun day, I'm always going to bring, my handgun with some ammo in it. And I'm always going to be practicing with my handgun. Even though I say it's a rifle day, my handgun's going to be on me, and I'm still going to be deploying it. I'm still going to be discharging rounds out of that firearm just because I want that training.
Yeah. And handgun is, like Jacob said in previous podcasts, handgun is so much harder to get good with. So it's going to be something that you have to work at more. So you should have more range days with it. Or even when you're running rifles, like you said, you still integrate some handgun shooting in those range days. So
yeah, and most of the I guess kind of fundamentals you take away from handgun training still apply to those same fundamentals in other, weapon platforms like carbines or shotguns or whatever it is. Very much the same principles. They're done in a different way, or some might be easier to achieve than others, but the principles kind of remain the same overall. So it's like if you can do it well with a handgun, you're going to be able to, with a little bit of time, transition that to being able to do that well with a carbine. For most things, there's things that are obviously very unique to both, and that's why you need to train with both. But yeah, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Your EDC, what you carry every day, should be your training priority. And if you only have time to train, one focus, then I believe it should be your EDC, at least right now. I mean, this is the whole point of all this, is like learning new skills, developing new skills, which part of developing new skills is going out and training. So if you really want to be prepared for, taking full responsibility and for yourself and your family and your community, I think a lot of these other critical skills that we talk about on this podcast are important to train and do. But, as of right now, we aren't in a situation like Ukraine. We live here, which thank goodness we're not. I think the line between what we're seeing in Ukraine and what we are now is pretty thin. It's a lot more thin than people think. So don't be naive and think it could never happen here, because it absolutely could. But we're not here to fearmonger or anything like that. Realistically, what you're doing now is going about your day, doing your thing as an American, and you have the right to, carry a gun in self-defense and carry other items to better enable your protection and your survival and defense throughout the day, and those are the things that you should be focusing on training with. So
Yeah, and then I mean, and getting on that, not training is such a, you're taking such a risk. Not doing the training itself is such a risk that you're kind of thrown out, and you're just in hopes that it won't stab you in the back, or get your life killed or other people's lives killed that you're around, or that you're trying to protect.
Well, I mean, what are some of the biggest consequences of not training?
Well, I don't know for sure. I got a story. Unfortunately, I lost a good friend that I served with. He was killed in an ATM he was carrying, and he got held up for money. And
at an ATM?
Yeah,
Okay.
ATM machine. And he did draw his gun, but he didn't shoot. And was trying to let the guy live, I think, but ended up dying in the process because he ended up getting shot. He got shot, I think, multiple times in the chest, and that's about it. Yeah, I think he got.
Dang.
So it's kind of like, I think, I'm gonna guess that he didn't train a whole lot, just because I knew the guy pretty well.
Yeah,
but yeah. So I think you can. I mean, that's ultimately the worst consequence you can have.
So just failure, and that's not, we're not saying that in a negative way, but that's just, that's realistically what it is. If you don't ever train and you're one of those people, and this isn't to say that he never trained.
No,
I'm not making that distinction. That's just, an example, but
I don't think he trained as much as he should have.
Right.
Ultimately. And I think he was, I don't want to say too nice of a person, but he was like the nicest guy I've ever met. So
He valued life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think that is, sadly, it is one of the ultimate consequences. And you, again, to bring up the FBI crime statistics, you can see it. You see the data is there of people that did try to deploy a firearm, whether it's out of a purse or, out of an alternate carry position. That's an issue too that you see a lot. People not understanding where the best places to carry are. And so, failing in that aspect of getting the gun out, and the data does support that generally it's not being able to get to your firearm quick enough, or getting to your firearm and it's not ready. And that's why I believe that you should never carry condition 2. There's a lot of data to support that. And so that's just like one aspect, is that time it takes from getting the gun from the holster, pointed on target, and then rounds sent to target is a critical time. And that's not, you're not automatically fast at that. I mean, we see it a lot here. Our bread and butter is holsters. That's the main thing we do at Dynamic Defense Solutions. Training is like our passion, and that's really, we're pushing heavily into that over the last couple of years. We've tried to kind of full focus into that, but ultimately the main thing that keeps the lights on here is holster building and making high quality holsters for people. And we have a lot of conversations with people that come in, and we start talking back and forth with a customer who's in the store and they're ordering a holster, and it starts to kind of come out like, well, I don't need that holster because I'm only going to shoot it once a year, or I can't tell you how many times it's like, I've actually never shot this gun before, so I don't really know how I want to carry it, so I don't know how I'm going to feel with it. And it's just, that's the wrong, you're setting yourself up for failure with that mentality. You need to, if you're buying a gun, any gun, doesn't matter if it's a handgun or not, if you're buying a gun in general with any kind of self-preservation in mind, whether that's you, your family, whatever it is, and you haven't shot it, or you don't even really know how you want to carry it, or those are things you haven't thought about, you need to check your mentality. You need to take a step back and be like, am I creating more of a liability for myself, or am I actually protecting myself by doing this? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't carry a handgun. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but I am saying that this is a big responsibility. And not to dovetail too much into, the last EDC podcast we did, because we talked a lot about this and the ultimate responsibility to carry a gun. It's a big one. But I think going with carrying a handgun is training with it and understanding that this is now a part of your life. Like, it's a lifestyle change.
Well, I tell a lot of my students, and this is kind of going back to caveat to what you were saying about condition 2 and condition 1. And for those who don't know, that's just meaning carrying one inside of the chamber. I tell people all the time, the first 2 things that are going to leave your brain when that type of situation happens, where at a point where you have to deploy a firearm, the first 2 things that leave is your oh man, now I can't even think about it.
What do you tell your students, Andrew?
First thing that's going to leave your mind is your dexterity and your memory.
Yeah.
Right? Your dexterity meaning you're going to fumble your firearm. If you don't practice taking off that safety switch, right? It's countless videos of people having to deploy their firearm and then it doesn't fire because they forgot that their safety was on.
Yep.
Right. Just not remembering the fact that they don't have one in the chamber, and then they have to deploy their firearm and then rack the slide back just to put one in. It's those types of situations that you're gonna miss out on that critical time that you were talking about with having to deploy a firearm. So learning your firearm and just being comfortable with your firearm to the point where you have one in the chamber and that what the mechanics of the firearm are doing as soon as it comes out.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's a great point. I mean, and you do see it a lot. You look at a lot of videos of, especially, there's been a lot coming out recently in like foreign countries and stuff where people deploy their firearm, and there's like the amount of fumbling going on and the lack of confidence in like presenting that firearm is staggering to me. Like, holy crap. And like, I've even seen videos where they pull it out and it drops on the ground, and then they're like, multiple people are wrestling for the gun.
Oh, yeah.
That all those like motor skills greatly diminish under high stress. Your body's in survival mode, and all these little tiny dexterous motions that you're having to do all the time with handguns, if you don't practice those things regularly and get super comfortable with that, then it's setting yourself up for failure.
I talk a lot about living in your world and how my world will always be different than your world. Right. So people ask me all the time, well, should I get this gun with the safety on it? You ask me that, I'm going to say no. My world is I don't have little ones running around or anything like that. I don't mind my guns being out in the open. I tell them, I was like, do you have little ones running around? Your world is different than mine. What do you think that you need? And if you are going to get these firearms, then you do need to practice with actually each time that firearm comes out of your holster, you need to practice that thumb switch. You need to practice either if you want to carry, that condition 2. Like I said, we're not going to, promote that, but you need to be comfortable carrying your firearm with it how it's supposed to be designed, which is one in the chamber so that it works when you need it. Do you have to pull your slide back? How many times do you practice, just taking the gun out and pulling the trigger versus how many times do you practice taking the gun out, having the safety come off and then pulling the trigger? If you do that just on your first shot when you're at the range and you never practice that on the range, you're setting yourself up for failure. Right? Practice, if your gun has a safety, every time that you shoot it to take the safety off. It should be part of that, that ritual when you deploy that firearm.
Yeah, that deployment to first round fired that time frame is so critical with EDC. And kind of going into the I guess the theory or kind of the mindset behind it. It's like we're not willy nilly pulling our guns out and using them as like de-escalation tools. Like there's a lot of legal problems with that. So.
Yeah, because actually brandishing your firearm is a
crime.
Yeah, it's a crime within itself. So if you're planning on bringing your firearm out, you better be planning on using it.
Because you're defending yourself.
Yeah, like your life is in jeopardy. You've made the decision. This is my last option. I have to do this right now. And if you've gotten to that point already, then time is of the essence. And again, the data supports that. So. One of the main consequences, again, of not training is just ultimate failure, not being able to get to the gun or, basically just being killed.
Or hesitation or,
yep.
It could be a training issue, which would be like not being able to get to the gun or fumbling the gun, not knowing that you have a safety on or not knowing that you're in condition 2 or whatever it may be. Everyone's got their own thing.
Yeah.
Or it could be a mindset thing where you weren't, prepared to actually use your firearm for deadly force at that point, which I mean, in the military, they ingrain that in you so hard. Like every target you shoot at in training is like, that's a person, that's a person, that's a person, that's a person. Like every target. So that way, when you do finally get in a firefight, it's almost like you're just shooting at targets again. And I've heard so many guys say that when they go overseas. It's like, man, I didn't even really think about it. That was a person until after the fact, you know?
Right.
Because that's been ingrained in their heads. Like, hey, yeah, this is a target. This is a person. This target's a person. This target's a person. And the silhouette looks like a human. So there's doing a little bit of, I don't want to say brainwashing, but it's just like conditioning your brain for when it is actually really a firefight. So I think that has a ton to do with it as well, because yeah, you can go to the range and you can train all day long on, you know, I can have the quickest, I can have like a sub-second sub-second first shot, but it doesn't matter if I'm super quick with it, but I'm not like mentally prepared to take someone's life with it.
Right.
Protect others' lives.
And that could have been Tyler's problem just in that alone. He could have been well trained, and he wasn't prepared to actually take someone's life, and he ended up paying the ultimate price. So
it can't be like, you can't take advantage of the fact that, I guess you can't underestimate the fact that this life and death is a very serious thing. And I think that ability to see that and the ability to recognize that is what sets you apart from someone who is an evil actor or an evildoer. You know, that's that person who is able to just commit these terrible acts and, you know, take lives willy-nilly, kind of like, you know, what we just had with like mass shootings and stuff. That type of person is so far gone. So we're not saying to, you know, work yourself to a point where you're just like callous and desensitized and stuff. Like, that value of human life is important, and it's going to give you the tools you need to make the right decisions, I think. But you have to piggyback that with extreme training and have the efficiency necessary to deploy that firearm when you actually need it. I mean, I can't overstate how critical that time period is. The other thing that's extremely critical is shot placement and being able to accurately put rounds where you want them to go. You know, you start talking about things like liability. That's another massive consequence of not training. You know, speed is important, but accuracy is extremely important as well. They go hand in hand.
Oh yeah, you are liable for every shot that comes out of your firearm, regardless if you're saving lives or, you know, or just at the range.
Yep.
That's your liability. Every bullet, and it's the impact. It's not just what's in the gun.
Yeah.
You know, we go back. We're kind of go back a little bit. We're, you know, talking with actual training and all that stuff. I see like people with pump action shotguns, right? They go and, I want to get that pump action shotgun because everybody knows that sound, right? We don't train that way. We don't just pump the shotgun thinking that that's what's going to save us.
Yeah. If you're training for that, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, because
absolutely.
if that doesn't actually scare them off, then have you planned for past that point?
Yeah.
And a lot of people haven't. So
Yeah. What? And that's
I'll just
something-
run my 870 pump, and they'll just get on.
they'll run
They'll
out of
know
the
that
house.
sound.
It's like, all right,
You don't know your opponent.
I was about to say, have you dealt with crackheads and people on meth and stuff? Because I have, and they're not reasonable people at all. So don't think that they're going to hear us.
There, maybe I should leave.
No, they're not.
No.
Yeah, a sober person might think that way, but not someone who's
already made those acts.
Half the time they don't really care about their lives anyway. So it's kind of like,
Yeah, and if you're
whatever.
dealing, I mean, this is getting into the weeds, but if you're dealing with like a psychopath or something like that, and they're there to kill you, they're going to be like, now I have some information. Now I can plan accordingly. I know where you are. I know what kind of gun you have. I know that you
have to
got
pump it
slow
each time
response.
you do shoot.
Yep. You just don't know. And so that's a good example of that. Going back to liability, something that it's a pretty common phrase I've heard a lot, and I actually really like it. And it's there's a lawyer attached to every bullet. And that's something to keep in mind. Now, if you need to neutralize a threat, you know, and shoot someone to, again, not necessarily, that's a big thing too. We're not necessarily shooting to kill in self-defense situations. We're shooting to stop whatever that threat is. So if you have someone that's your life's in jeopardy or your family's life's in jeopardy or whatever the case may be, or you're, you know, going in to save innocent other people that, whether like, let's say you had to respond to an active shooter situation and you were all that was there and you're like, man, I'm going to save these kids. Somebody's got to do it. You go in, your goal is to stop that person. You're going in to stop them. And as soon as they're stopped, the mission changes at that point. But
yeah, and going on with that, talking about every, you're responsible for every bullet. There's also collateral damage as well. If you make it out of a stressful situation where you end up having to kill someone, but you also end up taking out an innocent life, especially if we're talking children, going back to our school shooting that we just talked about, is it like, it's going to be hard to live with that for the rest of your life. Like, you're almost going to wish you just died, probably. Like, I know I would. So, I mean, you got to take that into consideration as well when it comes to training, because I don't want to be that person ever. I don't want that to, and it happens. Friendly fire happens even to some of the most trained people ever. It happens to special forces teams and Navy SEALs and all sorts of stuff, guys who train ridiculous amounts of time, and it still happens because it does happen. But you should do your best to avoid it for sure.
Yeah, and one of the best ways I think to avoid it is training. And that's not even what you just mentioned. That's not even getting into the legal ramifications. I mean, if you accidentally shoot someone else, like, there's no, well, we get you were trying to stop that threat, like, you're in trouble. Like, you're probably going to get, I mean, you know a little bit more about charges than I do, but probably involuntary manslaughter, I would guess, at least.
Yeah.
So
at least you would sit in a pretrial facility for a while until you got bail or whatever, and then after that, you could potentially beat your case, but you're still going to be living with that regardless.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I think one of the final consequences of not training that I really wanted to touch on was just overall negligence, and then accidentally shooting yourself or hurting yourself. I
mean, me and you just talked about a story today about an individual with a 1911. He had a chest rig holster on, and he didn't have his safety on, and he sent his hammer forward, and then next thing you know, he's out there walking in the bush, and then his gun went off, shot him right in the chest. He's alive. He's a tough individual. He ended up, you were saying,
he pretty much just a long ways and
just put pressure on it and went another 11 miles till he got help.
Yeah, I don't remember all the details specifically, but it was pretty crazy. But I mean, I don't know I can't remember how far it actually was, but yeah, I mean, that's just, firearms are dangerous. Like, you need to understand that they're a tool. They are tools. They're inanimate objects. They can't make their own decisions to do right or wrong. That's all on the user. But if you're dumb and you're not trained and you aren't careful and you don't understand the principles of safety and, all these different things and also understand just mechanically how it works, I think that's something that gets overlooked, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people bring a firearm in and they hand it over, hey, I want a holster for this, and I'm like, okay, would you mind clearing that for me? And they're like, okay. And now usually if it doesn't happen right out the gate, I just grab it and clear it, just because I'm not going to take the chance of having a loaded gun just getting waved around, because it happens. But there's been a lot of times I've seen, I'm actually not sure, like, man, like, you're in here to get a holster to carry this thing, and you don't know how to operate it. Understanding how your firearm works, even down to the nitty gritty, understanding where the firing pin is, how those springs move it. That's good stuff to know. It helps you understand how it's going to function. It helps you understand how you need to operate it, and it'll help you in situations even a little more far where maybe something's wrong. It'll help you diagnose what might be wrong with your gun.
Absolutely.
So, negligence is not an excuse, and definitely train. But again, kind of, I guess to finish out that point, if you don't train, you don't work with that gun a lot, you don't go shoot a lot, the odds of you inadvertently hurting yourself or someone else with it are just a lot higher. So, So anyways, I guess with that all being said, the biggest thing you can do is intentionally train. And, I guess we can kind of start talking about that. What would you guys say is like one of the first steps of intentionally training?
I mean, what is it that you wear every day? What is it that your job, what is it that you have? Do you carry on your job? Like, Do you carry outside the waistband? Do you carry inside the waistband? If you carry for a job, what is it? Train that way. If that's your job, it's your primary focus at that point. Have we're talking about EDC right now, so have your appendix carry holsters and 3 o'clock inside the waistband holsters ready, and understand that where the fabric's moving, how to clear your firearm from the holster, things like that. But going in there with a plan, to do that and to train.
Yeah. And that can be achieved by, a more safe method would be doing, dry fire training with it. I feel like that's how you can get pretty easy reps without even going to the range. You can sit there and run dry fire, practicing clearing articles of clothing and just doing reps. I mean, you can get, a ton of reps every day, doing that.
I mean, we used to have a rule every time we left the place. I remember this when I was living up here with you as your roommate. We every time we left the place, we would do another draw about 4 or 5 times before we left the house.
Yep.
Just to get that good solid. Yeah, that good solid couple more times in before we left out into public.
Yeah, it's cool too because you test whatever you're wearing that day, like your clothing.
Every time you step out that door.
Yep. And being here in Alaska, it's different. Like whether you live in Texas or wherever you're at, but layers are going to be a thing. If you're in Texas and you're in that like 8 minutes of rain, and Andrew's I've only been to Texas a couple times briefly, but he was saying
it will rain almost every other day, but you just got to wait about 8 minutes.
But if you got rain gear on, or if you're here in Alaska and you're wearing multiple layers because it's cold, running through your paces with multiple like types of clothing. And I'm glad you brought up clothing because it's a problem I see a lot is that people go to the range, they're like, oh, I'm going to go train with my gun. And then they put on like their tactical gear or their cool guy stuff, or like, yeah, I'm going to put on my, they just wear something that's not part of their daily
all the time at
wardrobe.
Yeah. Cool camo pants, nice indoor gun range attire, Yeah. You don't need the camo, Do you usually wear this all the time? Like,
yeah.
Hey, some people do.
And hey, if you're, you brought up, what's your job? I like that too, because if you're a cop, for example,
it's outside the waist.
You need to train with how you carry.
And that is still your everyday carry.
That's your everyday carry.
Everyone associates EDC with like
CCW.
With CCW, and it's not technically the same. It's literally what you carry every day.
I mean, if you work at a gun range,
my range at the range I'm working at, is my gun's outside the waistband.
Yeah.
So I work about 6 days a week. I'm training with outside the waistband. I do some reps in with the appendix carry and stuff like that, but my main focus is what it is that I'm mainly wearing, and it's outside the waist,
as it should be. For me, it's concealed carry. I wear appendix. I carry appendix. 12 o'clock inside the waistband. So whenever I go shoot handgun, it's primarily that's what I'm working on. Working on deployment efficiency, different things like that. But yeah, absolutely. You use what you carry, and dress the way you dress. So I know.
Yeah, I know that. I'm glad you brought up the range too, because it's not like I talked about dry firing, but yeah, obviously if you're dry firing, if you do kind of like what you guys were talking about, doing 5 draw strokes a day right before you leave for the house, you're doing it in the clothing that you're wearing for the day. But yeah, also on top of that, definitely going to the range and your normal attire, whatever you wear, is important. Yeah. Wear an outfit that you would wear going to the mall or whatever.
Yep.
Or whatever you do.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate, use what you carry. And it's an important distinction to make because I see it a lot. People go train and they'll bring some random gun, and kind of play around with it. I just bought this handgun. It's cool. I want to go shoot. That needs to be extracurricular. You might be listening to this and like, man, that's boring. Like, I want to go have some fun when I go. You can make it fun. Like, I'm not saying don't have fun, but at the same time, we're not doing this to have fun. Like, that's something that it's a pet peeve of mine. If you're carrying a gun every day because it's fun, then you're in the wrong area. You're in the wrong mentality. This is not fun. We're doing this because it could save your life. It is like, an analogy I've used frequently is when you drive in your car and you put your seatbelt on, you don't put your seatbelt on because you're expecting to get in a car accident. You put it on in case you get in a car accident. But it's on. Your seatbelt's on. You cruise around. You do your thing, and then you take your seatbelt off and you get out of the car when you're done driving. It's very similar to that mentality. It's not. You don't put a seatbelt on because you're having a blast and this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna put this seatbelt on. No, it's a thing you do to keep you safe while you're driving the vehicle, and that's
you having a plan. That's you having a plan just in case something you do get in that car accident. All right, you planned for it, right? And it's the same thing that when we're training, we have a plan when we go and train. There is we talk about recreational shooting, and I see it all the time, and I love it. I love it, seeing people who don't usually come in to shoot to the range. They bring in a whole group of friends, and it's great because it's bringing people into the firearms industry. Sure. But when you're just out there on that lane and just pulling the trigger to pull the trigger, you're not in a way doing much. You're creating the bad habits of just pulling that trigger and having fun. Like, actually learn what your trigger is doing as you pull it back. Understand what your sights are doing. Like, have the plan where, I always tell people, at our range is that, just like going to the gym. We don't go to the gym to lift heavy things. We go to the gym with a plan, and we isolate muscles that we want to work out. We do sets and a whole bunch of reps of it, things like that. We go to the range and we work on individual aspects to make us a better shooter.
Mm-hmm. Right. Money. That's exactly right. Having a plan, I think, is I think that's one of the main parts people leave behind when they go to the range. It
is fun. Don't get me wrong. Yep. It's fun, but you still need to have some type of curriculum that you're doing with yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, understand, the stages of the trigger and things like that. Understand, like, okay, well, let's work on draw. Let's work on this. Let's do a whole bunch of reps of this. Mm-hmm. All right. Make that habit. All right.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a pretty important part too is about having that plan is
creating standards. Within the plan,
creating standards to have in your plan. Where was I going with that? There was something you said in there that I wanted to touch on, and it just escaped me.
Having the sets, having reps, with all that stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, that needs. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So you were talking about going to the range and having fun, and I wanted to reiterate that I'm not saying don't do that. I said earlier that should be extracurricular. So that's in addition to what you do with your normal training, your regiment that you've built.
It can be fun. It can be fun. Don't get me wrong. You can have a great experience, renting the fully automatics. Yeah, we don't have fully automatics in our closet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It can be fun doing that.
Wait, you don't?
Oh, yeah, I wish. Yeah. But, just going there and understanding, like, if you want to have fun with the fully automatics, talk to your instructor, understand what the recoil is doing. All right. Don't just pull the trigger to pull the trigger. Like, understand the mechanics of everything of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think you'll find that just like when you go to the gym, I feel like at first you start going to the gym and the relationship with it is like, oh, it's hard work. Like, oh my goodness, I'm always tired. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do this. But then you learn to love it, and you learn to and you get to the point where you're like, oh dude, I cannot wait to go to the gym, and meet up with my buddies that I've gone with and work on this. I want to increase my PR or whatever it is. That's very similar. Like, you start working with that plan, you build that curriculum for yourself, and you don't need to go crazy. It could be as simple as I want to go and get better at this specific thing. I want to get better at one-to-one reloads. I want to get better at draw stroke or whatever it is. And that could just be what you try to work on, and you could just continually work on that until you get to a point where you're happy with it. As long as you have a plan in place, and towards the end of this, we'll kind of show an example of what that could look like, but because I think it'd be good to cover that. But having a plan in place, so you're not just turning money into noise. That's a thing that you see a lot. Just somebody loads a mag and just runs all those rounds out of their gun, just boom, 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 boom. And that can be fun to do a drill mag dump. Yeah, exactly.
There's drills for those that you can do. All you got to do is learn them, and you can actually have that type of fun, but actually learn something with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it, like you were talking about, it is going to be fun. Just like the gym becomes fun once you've done it enough. I've said it before in previous podcasts, but it's fun doing stuff that you're good at. So when you push through the stage of getting good at something, yeah, it may be a little uncomfortable and unenjoyable at first, but as soon as you become good at it, then you start to have fun with it, and then you continue to get better and better.
Yep.
So,
and I think that's where like having standards is really important, So don't just go and, do the same thing over and over and over again with no way to track your progression. I think a shot timer is an extremely valuable tool to get for this. Shot timers are kind of old news. I feel like everybody now knows about them, or everyone really should have one. I feel like if you've been carrying, or if you're just getting into this, just maybe look into them. There's a lot of, if you just Google shot timer, they're going to come up. It's basically a device that works off of decibels, and when you start shooting, and it'll register your shots, and it'll time how long it took from when the timer started. It'll have like a beep that'll initiate whatever drill you want to do.
It's
just
down
a good
to the
way.
millisecond.
Oh yeah, they're extremely precise, very accurate. So having standards in place that you can track, and things you can repeatedly do and track your time on, and try to progress. I think it's very important to meet, or to build standards, meet, and then exceed those standards, and then make yourself new standards.
Absolutely.
Constantly push yourself. You should never have the mentality of like, I've arrived, I can do a bill drill in 2 seconds, I'm done. No, now you need to do a bill drill in 1.5 seconds.
That's one of the most interesting thing about this hobby and this sport, or however it is, or this recreational shooting, however it is that you wanted to train, is that you can constantly see yourself improve the more you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's it's one of my favorite things about it is, it's when you're on the range, everyone associates with the range with loud noise and all sorts of stuff. But when I'm on the range, it's quiet, because all I'm trying to do is make a better shot than I did previously,
right,
at a better time, at a faster time, and at a safer time,
That was the most hua thing I've ever heard in my life.
just
when I'm on the range, it's quiet.
It's quiet.
That was epic.
Oh, dude.
But it's good. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think,
I'm just giving you crap.
Oh,
Andrew.
dude, you're good.
there's a lot of standards targets out there that people make. Like, one of my favorites is the Bear Solutions standard. It's a really cool target. It's fun to shoot. It's a very challenging target, and it's got a lot of different standards built into it. Like, you can, it's obviously, you can do like a cold start on it. You can, there's a lot. You can do it from this distance, or this distance. So there's ways you can use that same free printable paper target that just prints off online, to do that. We have our own targets, the BSAT targets. You can find them right on our website and just print them off. I'll probably link them in the description on this one, but BSAT stands for Balance of Speed and Accuracy Target. So BSAT, Balance of Speed and Accuracy Target. But yeah, they, again, lots of different things you can do. Super versatile, really good way to push yourself and then track progression. It's cool because you can track progression not only with time standards, but also with your accuracy. So they have like concentric rings on them that kind of help you track your progression and your improvement.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like those targets. It's a good way to get warmed up. I feel like we always go out there and start with those. It seems like,
yeah,
like it's a good way to just get the day rolling, especially if you haven't been to the range. Like, if you had a big gap for whatever reason, like you haven't been able to go in the last like couple weeks, and it's a good way to kind of like knock off the rust a little bit. Start
Exactly.
slow and then start slowly building up some speed. But
yeah, and kind of on that, I feel like, you mentioned us going together. I think training with others is like extremely valuable.
Oh, 100%. It's the fact that I can, not only coach, but get coached by people who are actually there with me, watching the recoil of my firearm, watching where it goes, and, in a way, just giving me better tips and tricks. I mean, I always say all the time, you should 100% go train with people who are better than you. You should 100% train with people who you're better than. And it's so that you can learn from them and they can learn from you. I always tell people all the time, I'll teach, some of my friends some stuff, and then, another one of my buddies will come through and I'll have that person teach them. I don't want to teach them. and it's because I want that person. Because when you're teaching someone or when you're with someone, talking about it, when you start talking about it, you start relearning all this stuff, right? You start kind of catching all the other stuff just by saying it to someone else.
Yeah.
Right? So train with the people who are better than you. Train with the people who you're better than, right? That way you can go back and forth and kind of just see, what information kind of gets passed around. And you at that point, you're just learning everything tenfold.
Yeah. No, it's incredible because you can learn something from someone and then get given like a task or here's the skills we're working on, and you run that drill and you're solely focused on yourself and you're focused on like, okay, this is what I need to do. I'm going for this standard. This is what I'm, trying to achieve. And then if you now turn around and train someone else and help someone else with something else that you're good at, or maybe even the same thing at a different time after you've gotten better at whatever that is, you get to see that from a whole new perspective. You get to look at it and be like, okay, I'm watching how this person's learning. Are they understanding what I'm saying? And then, like you said, just you saying it, it's almost like you open up a new understanding of, understanding something to the point where you can teach it to someone else it's already at such a higher level of understanding that then watching someone learn from what you're teaching them gives you like the benefit of then again learning. It's kind of cool. Yeah. So it's like this full circle effect.
Yeah, and I think most instructors would agree. Like I've heard so many instructors from people we've taken classes with, and even I've noticed it from teaching classes. It's like I've learned so much by being the instructor in classes.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And I've heard other instructors say the same thing because you learn how other people grasp the information, and then sometimes it like makes it clearer, like the actual, like not that you didn't understand what you're teaching, but more just like, I don't know, you just have a better grasp on different types of learning styles and stuff like that. So I just feel like I don't know, it's confusing to explain until you've actually experienced it for yourself. So, but I think it is beneficial to definitely train with others because.
Yeah, if anything, it's accountability,
Yeah, and it makes everyone better, Like, our podcast is all about, like, Minutemen and stuff like that. And
community.
You can't be a true effective Minuteman by yourself. Like, you need a community.
Yeah.
You need to coordinate with others, and part of coordinating is training with others. So I think it's important to definitely do, so...
And you can absolutely train on your own. I don't want to make it sound like you're not going to be successful if you train by yourself. I mean, you 100% can. But I think isolating yourself, it's easy to get caught in your own echo chamber, and like what you said, Stephen, you end up working on things you're comfortable with. You work on your strengths. It's fun. You get more enjoyment. Me at least, when I'm like really happy with something I've done, it's easy to stay in that comfort zone. You're like, I'm really good at this. I'm gonna film myself doing this a bunch of times or whatever.
Yeah, and where if you got multiple people, everyone's better at different things. So they're like, no, we're working on this week. That's what I'm good at.
Yeah, and then what everybody sucks at. That's something that I always kind of like to do when we would do trainings. I'd be like, all right, we're doing this, and everyone's like, oh, really?
Yep.
Like, yep, we're doing it. Let's go. And then you have like those guys in your group that are like, sick, dude, that was fast, but now we're doing this, and it's just like, oh no, So it's good though. It's covers way more. It ends up being a lot more well-rounded. The accountability is hard to beat, and you have people tracking progression with you. And then there's also that competitive nature, which I thrive off of. Yeah. I love that. Like, I want to be the best out here, and that's like Andrew and I got into shooting kind of together, like.
And all we did was compete against each other.
Yep. And it was constant. And it was like always trying to be faster than each other. And like at the time we were getting more into like the competition kind of style stuff. But that's where it all started. It started like basically right after we got back from deployment, we started pushing heavily into it. And ever since then, it was like, constantly feeding off of each other. And, then we developed our own like group that like-minded individuals. We basically just you can do it. You can make your own group. Like, we literally did it with people we didn't know. Like, we had a bunch of people we did know, but we made like a Facebook page.
It was funny. It kind of turned into be, getting our platoon out there on the range. That's what that Facebook page and all that stuff was originally about. But then once we, a couple of years more into the future, a lot of our guys, left the military. They went their own way. We did. But getting back out there on that Facebook page, it was funny because towards the end when we were doing that, there was more people there that were out of the military and that were more civilians than we were originally started with.
Yeah, because when I got out of the military, I started shooting with you guys too, and we didn't get to shoot a whole bunch. Me and you, I think we did quite a few.
We shot
times.
a couple of times.
Yeah, so. And I got out and basically replaced Register because he ended up leaving back to Texas, and Jacob needed someone to shoot with. But so it's weird though because when I got there, it was mostly civilians at the time because Sam had already left. I think I never really got to train with Sam. I've only trained with him when he comes up and visits.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of you guys' military buddies that were in it before I got out of the military, all pretty much got out and went home.
We had a whole bunch of just kind of civilians.
It was pretty much civilians and. At the time, I think it was just us three that were prior military at the time when we were training with those guys. And it's kind of cool because some of those guys still train together to this day that we were training with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool.
We ended up, me and Jacob moved, because I came back from the military, moved down to the Kenai Peninsula, and Jacob was up in the Valley/Anchorage area at the time. And that's where we were doing all our training was up there. And so we ended up starting DDS, and Jacob moved down here. So we kind of stopped training with those guys. We have gone up, but it's been forever since we've gone shot with them. But
well, yeah, and then the group you're talking about, there was that group too. I mean, I was talking about like him and I started our own separate group even to that. But then the second group you're referring to,
but they kind of merged a little bit. Some of the same people were doing
kind of a crossover.
They would kind of come to ours first, and then we kind of send them over to the next one.
Yeah, which the other group. Which it was called 7. It was really, really cool group of guys. Joe Kim actually is a firearms instructor. He's a lead instructor and I think the owner of Phalanx Academy up in Anchorage. So really solid company to look for if you're in the Anchorage area. But he started that group, the group 7, and really cool. Basically, just a same kind of thing.
Minded individuals.
That was like for me. That was the group I went to like improve. Like that was like. It was people that were better than me there. There were some people I was better than. You know, it's kind of what you were talking about, Andrew. Like, it was that kind of mix. And then our little group that we started that was kind of somewhat separate. You know, again, there was dovetail. Like, some of the guys went to both because guys just wanted to train.
Oh, yeah. Trigger time.
The one we started kind of more for our platoon that kind of ended up branching out into, like, just people we met, you know, just a lot of civilians. It was more about us teaching. Like, it was kind of cool because that's where we really got our feet wet in like instruction. That's where we really figured out, like, you know, and we weren't making any money off of it. This was all just our, you know, this is just training.
Just having fun training and learning how to teach train, you know, teach training.
Yep. How to be instructors, basically. That's like where we first started with that. And then, you know,
it's good times.
Yeah, man. I miss it actually. And back then, ammo was cheap and available. Oh, it's crazy. We were just trying to get some 9mm the other day to do a little training, and the only boxes they had available were all these bulk boxes. I was like, dude, I just can't afford that right now. Yeah, it's like $140-something for like 250 rounds or something. It's like, man, I mean, that's pretty expensive. So
yeah, is it worth it? That's
9mm too.
So that's why right now training's kind of hard to do.
It's like, what was those 100-round boxes we got? A 5.56 for like $89. It's like almost $1 a round. It's crazy, man.
Yeah,
spendy, but at least it's more available. I mean, it's worth spending the money on, but that's a whole other issue. You know, budgeting your money and time. I think it's important to make that distinction as well. Like, time is a thing. I mean, especially now, I understand that more now owning a business than I ever did before, how valuable time is. You know, back when I worked a 9 to 5, it was never actually a 9 to 5. It was usually like a 7 to 5 or something. But back when I back when I worked a more regular job, you know, you get off at the same time every day, you're done, and, you know, you can plan out, make time for it. So I understand, like, schedules can be hard, and also now that we have families, I think that's a huge part of it, at least for Steven and I, you know, like, having kids, you know, it's extremely important to make time for them and make time for our wives. You know, you don't want to
can't just be out at the range all day like we used to.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and you don't want to either. I mean, realistically, I mean, there's I never really knew if I would be to this point, but I'm totally to the point now where if I had to pick, I'll pick my family for sure. So I'd rather spend time with them. But you have to make time for it. You do, and you got to budget it in, and it's hard to do. Honestly, for me, the time budget's harder than the money budget. So I think, but
it's pretty mixed right now with the cost of living.
Yeah, that's true.
Pretty ridiculous right now.
The cost of living right now is like all right.
I think in general, I guess is
I know
what I
I'm
mean.
have to spend this much to fill up my gas tank now, so it takes away from a little bit of the range ammo funds. But I mean, I
don't know how y'all do it, dude. It's about $1 more than it is in Texas.
It fluctuates though, because I remember not long ago, it was several months ago now, but you were telling me what it cost there, and it was way cheaper here. Like you were saying that your boxes of ammo were like.
I mean, I also get my little discount.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah, that's true.
That's why I don't like buying ammo elsewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, no, I think it fluctuates. It depends on availability, and usually ammo here is more expensive because it's got to get shipped up and all that crap. But I mean, so yeah, budgeting the time and the money is really important for training intentionally, and then it's also important for being able to stay consistent. I mean, I think that's really, I mean, you can do if you're only doing this stuff once in a blue moon, or I'd shoot about every 6 months. That's just not going to work. That's just not enough. And some people are different. Like some people need less than others. I got to stay on it. To stay sharp, I got to stay pretty regular. And ammo's expensive and it's hard right now, but dry fire training is something I'm always doing,
So for the budget, I try to stick with X amount of rounds per week. However how I can do it. Either it be 200, 250 rounds, either it be 250 rounds in one day or 50 rounds each day. I try to at least do, an X amount of bullets within your budget a week. If you can do that, then you're solid. If you can do it every 2 weeks, then, you got to make your own. But try to figure out what it is that you can train with, per week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to plan it out. I've never really thought about that way. And I actually noticed that you do focus in on that because you were talking about different guys, what their weekly budgets were on ammunition earlier today.
That's how I try to figure out how my training schedule goes.
That's a smart way to do it because then you can, it's that can become part of your monthly expenses, and which I think it should. I think that's going back to budgeting the money, Yeah, that's a cool way to do it, and I like it because you do what you can afford. If you can only afford one box a week, a 50-round box a week, then
that's still better than nothing, or maybe going out every 6 months. It's better than something to have some type of budget to where you're constantly doing it rather than randomly doing it.
Yeah,
and you can, like Jacob said earlier, you can substitute dry fire in. If you can't afford, as expensive a budget, I think you should dry fire regardless, whether you got, you're doing a couple thousand rounds per week versus someone who's only doing 100 rounds per week. It's like you should still be doing dry fire training on top of that, but maybe the guy who's only able to do 100 rounds a week can supplement more dry fire training in.
Absolutely.
Because
it
does. I mean, it is effective. Yeah, you're not getting everything that you do when you're actually firing the weapon, but you at least are going through the motions and you're building those narrow pathways and stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
And on that's like making sure that your mindset for training is proper. Treat every time you draw, like you pull out the gun, you're using it for real. I mean, if you're training for it to be your EDC, you need to actually act like I'm trying to get to this gun to save my life, or save other people's lives, or save my kids' lives, or,
a lot of times I see people, going into mindset, having a holster versus not having a holster. At certain clubs and certain gun ranges, yes, you do have to be holster qualified. Little things like that. All you got to do is talk to your range staff, and they can help you out with that. But yeah,
dude, Alaska is so different than Texas on the range.
It's so
thing.
crazy.
Like you talk about lanes and like holster certified range staff. Alaska ranges are like, here's a bay. Like Well, that's the direction of fire. Don't shoot yourself. All right.
See you later.
Later.
Have fun.
You never see that guy again, like ever.
It's so fun, man. I tell people all the time, going to the mindset, I see this like down south, the guns will be out there on the benches on the lane. Like, is that gun going to be in that position when you absolutely need it?
Right.
Is it, I understand that some people don't want to be holster qualified on the ranges and stuff like that. And you're there for the recreational shooting and just the trigger time alone. But is the gun just randomly sitting out in front of you all the time when someone says target or when someone comes into the home? Like, getting to your gun is an important part of training, and having the mindset of pulling a firearm, regardless if it's a paper target or not. Like, you need to understand that mindset, put yourself in there, it could be, kind of stressful, but it should be,
Yeah.
It's having to brandish and discharge a firearm,
Yep.
Yes, we're at a range and you're inside of a building that's, designed to take the impact of the bullet, but you're not going to be inside of a building designed to take the impact of a bullet when you're in your living room,
Yeah, exactly. And you were talking about holster qualified, which I'm assuming that means like certain ranges.
We just want to make sure that
you can safely
draw your holster.
Which, I mean, if you carry every day, that's a no-brainer. You need to be holster qualified at your local range. Yeah. Go through the process.
It's not hard.
Yeah, I doubt it is.
Half of the instructors, they just want to see you. They just want to watch you do it, and then they put it into your notes. That's about it.
And then as a customer, you have like a little note that says, okay, this guy can draw from the holster.
I just say HQ plus the date, and I'm just sending them on their way because I want them to train that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that should be, a no-brainer. Like, if you're sitting here listening to this podcast and you're near a range where that's a requirement, knock it out. I mean, if anything, it's a extra training step. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's
You'll
probably
be out there with an instructor, and if there is an issue, by the way, everyone at a range, the staff there wants to help. It's why they are there. All right. So if they were to see something, they're not just going to you're done. No, they're going to help you so that you can be holster qualified. Like, it's those things need to happen. And a lot of the times, the reason why they do the holster quals and stuff like that to make sure is because at indoor gun ranges, you're catering to a lot of first time shooters.
Right.
And a lot of those recreational shooters that are just kind of coming in there to have fun.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's, that's cool, and it's bringing a lot of people into the firearms industry, but just making that mindset, having that mindset of actually getting and working to your firearm to deploy it is key. It's not going to be in front of you on the table. It's not going to be on the coffee table or on the table, on the end table all the time, depending on how your world is. But the mindset is just a huge factor in just training.
I kind of like that you accidentally said making that mindset too, because I think it is building that mindset in a way. Like, you have to make yourself think like, okay, this is life and death. Like, it's important to make that mental connection. I really think it is. There's a lot of psychology stuff there, and I'm not going to pretend to be a psychiatrist and understand how all that works, but at least for me, I feel like it's helped. It's helped me in the past, like, firefights and stuff that we've been in. It felt like training. Like, I remember back to that, and I was like, people were like, oh, was it crazy? And it's like, no, it felt like we were at the range. Like, I mean,
because we practice this type of stuff.
I remember our first firefight we were in, Andrew just like looked up and he's like, those are tracers going right over our heads. Like, what the heck? And there was no feeling, at least for me, there was no feeling of like being shaky, or it was just kind of like, oh, I engage as Green Ivans, like that was it's kind of like what it was, that Green Ivans is what they called the it's probably not a politically correct thing to say, but whatever. It was literally green little silhouettes that the U.S. Army U.S. Army Rangers had, and I think it came from like the Cold War era, so they called them Ivans, Russian. Yeah. I don't know. Anyways, they're green. Yeah. Long story short, that's what that was.
But. And that goes back to like what I was talking about earlier. Training for the moment where you actually have to take someone's life. I think that's so important because that's part of mindset as well. Like, I think the military does such a good job at that, and like, I think it prepares you, for just because all of us serve doesn't mean that we were all prepared to, like, just because what the military trained us, we were all prepared to use our EDC, and I think we were prepared to deal with Iraq and Afghanistan if we were sent there, or anywhere else that we were sent to.
Yeah.
Because it's like a force on force situation.
Right.
But actually training for if you had to use your concealed carry weapon,
Yeah.
or your everyday carry, I guess, not concealed carry, but whatever you use, whether you're law enforcement or just a civilian that's carrying, being prepared.
Yep.
Training for when I'm taking this shot, I'm actually trying to kill this person, whether it's just a target, but actually going through that,
making that connection.
mental connection. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, because then at that point, it might sound kind of hardcore, but it's just another day at the office. You know what I mean? Like, boom, deployment, engaged. Like, you go through the motions, like just like you would have on the range. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make, referring back to our podcast, referring back to our firefight was, it felt like training. It felt like, like when I was behind that 240, it felt like I was on the machine gun range a little bit. It didn't, because we had done it so much.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like
It was just automatic.
Should be something you do constantly, and having that mindset that Steven was talking about is a huge part of that. It's a huge part of the puzzle. Anything else on intentional training you guys want to like touch on before we kind of move on?
I think we talked about a lot.
Cool. So we kind of want to go through like a training session, just an example of like a training session. And your training session wouldn't have to be like this, but this is kind of a pretty standard, basic outline of kind of what we would do, like if we went to the range. Like, Steven and I use this kind of outline a lot. Andrew, you did the same outline with us whenever we used to train together. I don't know if you still use a similar outline today, but yeah, and it depends on a few things. But the very first thing, like we talked about, is you need to plan. Have a plan. It needs to include how much time you have on the range and how much ammo you have. I think those are two things that you really need to add into your plan.
Any of my layouts, at the very top right, anytime I give you a plan or a drill, you're going to see the round count. And it's because I want you to know how many bullets are actually going to be going out of your firearm and how many bullets you actually need before you even show up.
Yeah.
Right. It goes back to, budgeting. Right.
Yep.
How much ammo do I have for these drills?
Yep. So something that I like, or that we like to do, is a warm up, and that's just to kind of shake the rust off, so to speak. Just kind of get warmed up, get ready to go, just like you would do if you go do a workout. You might stretch, or you might do some like lightweight stuff to get like kind of warmed up and get a little loosened up. Same kind of thing. And there's a few good drills that I kind of wanted to go over that are good for warm ups. One of them, actually, we used to do it all the time at the 7 training.
Oh, yeah. This is where I learned that one, man.
Yeah.
And I still do this to the day, the one-hole drill.
Yep.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, dude. One-hole drill, you can take all the time you want. And all you're trying to do is you shoot one round, and then the next round goes into that hole. We call it the one-hole drill. And you try to do that about 5, X amount of times, how much, your budget and your plan is. But it's very key. You're trying to do the least amount of movements, as just understanding the firearm, the trigger press, all the stages of the trigger, what's happening when those trigger breaks, where are your sights lined up. You want it the same each time. That's why we call it the one hole drill. You're trying to get X amount of rounds in one hole.
Yep.
Your
take goal all the time is the tightest group as possible.
Take all the time you want on that. Like I said, it's your warm up.
Yeah. Another really good one are like cold start targets, and there's a lot of them out there. A lot of companies nowadays have, and you can literally just type in like shooting cold start target, and it'll come up with a bunch. So I'm not going to sit here and list a bunch of them, but so go find some. There's good ones out there. I really like them, and the whole, I guess, the whole thing about them is before you shoot at all. So like if you did want to use a cold start target, this would be before you did one hole or anything like that. This would be like the very first thing you did. It's to test your readiness and your balance of speed and accuracy out of the holster right then and there. So it's kind of simulating like what condition, how
effective you are actually like right now without getting warmed up.
Where's your skill level at right now?
And that's important for like an everyday carry mentality, because that's what it's going to be if you do have to pull it. It's not like you get to go warm up. Like, hold on a second.
Yeah, let me do some one hole for a little bit.
Put that gun away really quick. Let me let me go warm up,
And
and then we'll meet up here again.
At Texas Gun Club, we actually have a little, I guess you can say, not like a joke, but we always tell people, I don't want to see you warm up. I want to see you do the qual now. You know,
Yeah.
it's how can you be on the spot, because that's what it's going to be like. You know, yes, your warm ups are important. I'm not trying to say like don't warm up and just start going, but when you're on the range, have that plan for the warm up, but just understand like you're not going to get that warm up when you need it.
Right.
You know, so understand what your ability is.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one that, and this is kind of what we start with on Steven and I start with quite a bit is BSAT. So balance of speed and accuracy. And balance of speed and accuracy is like a term that gets thrown around a lot. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It is improving your balance between being as fast as possible while being as accurate as possible, and having a good, maintaining a good balance between the two. So you can shoot, if you shoot super fast, but all your rounds are sporadic and all over the place and you can't hit what you're aiming at, then you can't actually shoot that fast. Like
in my 101 classes for new students, especially for people who haven't shot before, I do about a 30 round warm up before we even do BSA, right? Before I'm even making them shoot fast, I even tell them take all the time you want. They don't know how many rounds I'm going to do, but it's 30. By the time they get to that last 30, I move the target out a little bit, and I'm like, all right, you're going to shoot now a second per shot. All right, because usually it's a little bit longer than that, especially with a new shooter. And then I tell them, I was like, I don't want you to think of anything other than just shooting for that second. All right, each second I want you to pull that trigger. All right, and I make them shoot quicker. All right, and they start to realize something, that it becomes more natural.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then I do it again. And now I tell them, you're going to shoot anytime I say target. All right, and I go way, way quicker than what they'd even think. And then at the end of it, I tell them, have you ever shot that fast before? And they go, absolutely not. I'm like, look at your target though. You made this thing a natural thing now. You did exactly what you've been doing for the past 35 rounds, and you just did it now at my speed. And yeah, we're not as accurate, but look what you're able to do.
Yeah,
you're getting 5 shots within 5 inches of a shot group, right? And you've never even shot that quick before.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that. It's like getting out of that comfort zone and learning to shoot a little bit quicker and trusting your natural movements to actually just point the firearm at your target.
Yeah. And now they've learned what their balance is.
Yep.
And that's also a progression point. So you can, and that's what's cool about like going back to our BSAT targets that we have. That's what it's all about. It's about, you have multiple areas you can improve in. You can work on your balance of speed and accuracy from this range, then you can change the range, you can change the speed, you can change the accuracy requirements. There's so many things you can work on there. That's why it makes such a good warm up. And it makes a good focus, I think.
It's a great focus point.
Yeah, and it's a good way to measure improvements too, because on most, even I would say, you don't have to use our BSAT targets necessarily, but we do have ones on our website, and you can record times and different stuff all on them. So it's nice for, future range days to track progression. You can see, okay, yeah, I actually am improving in this area, or I'm not improving in this area for whatever reason. I'm starting to lose the accuracy, but I'm doing it at the same time. I need to start working on dialing my accuracy and stuff. So
yeah. And I think it's, I guess I can't say it enough that accuracy is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
And there's a huge focus on speed nowadays. I think there's a lot of like gun influencers and stuff out there that are super fast, and so everyone's focused on speed. And you should be as fast as possible. But if you're shooting so fast that you can't ever shoot accurately, then you can't actually shoot that fast. That's it. I just said this a second ago, but I wanted to reiterate it, because you should be able to hit what you're aiming at. That's your top priority. You need to have the marksmanship to get on target and make that shot. That process needs to be as quick as you can possibly do it while still hitting your target. And if you're slow at doing that, then yes, it's going to take training. And you need to improve your
speed.
Take
a step back. That's what BSA is all about. It's finding, I was like, you know what, maybe I can't do 5 shots in 2 seconds. All right. Because when I do it, I'm all over the place. All right. Maybe let's take a step back. Let's do 5 shots in 3 seconds. Let's try to get it down, and then focus on that shot group.
Yep.
All right. Bring it in, bring it tighter. And then once it is tight inside those zones, those A zones that you want, go ahead. Let's start moving it up. All right. And that's all about finding your balance. That's what it's made for. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's important to know what it is, and it's important to constantly improve it. Another really good warm up I like are some people call them like acquisition drills. It's just, a lot of times we'll do a really simple one where you start kind of at the ready. So like, high ready. So just like gun out right underneath the eyes. You're already out of the holster. And then just, we usually do it, I think it's 7 yards, and it's 2 rounds to the A zone on the head, of an IPSC target. So basically you're just trying to get 2 rounds.
Find your sights.
Yep. And we usually do a par time of 1 second. So you should be able to, in 1 second, pop up, bang, bang, 2 rounds on the head at 7 yards. 7 yards is kind of seem like a random number, but it's a pretty common like self-defense distance. So it's like 7 yards down to 3 yards.
Those of y'all that are ever wanting your, here at CCW or LTC elsewhere or anywhere, that 7 yards is going to be on your test. That's part of the qualification. Is 3, 7, and 15 yards. So you might as well practice it.
Yeah. And I think too that handgun you should practice out to even 25 yards if you can. I think it's important to be able to make confident shots at that distance. But yeah, so acquisition drills are super simple. There's a bunch out there, but that's a super simple one you can do. Set up an IPSC target, and if you can't do it at 3 yards, if you can't do it at 7, start at 3. Start at 3 yards. You might be like, man, it's super close. Well,
you'll find that it's still training. You're still having,
and you're still going through the steps, especially if you're going from low ready or whatever. You're still presenting the firearm, you're finding your sights, and you're having to pull the trigger.
Yep. And then do a follow-up.
Yep.
So that follow-up's important too.
That follow-up's incredibly important. That's something I struggled with for a long time, because if you don't ever practice it, there was a time when I first got out of the military and I first started getting into handgun shooting and stuff, because we didn't train handgun in the military. Like we always talk about that. I would, I don't know if I was trying to conserve rounds. I can't remember why, but I would just do a lot of like one-shot drills, just, from concealment, draw it, shoot. And then I started training with you guys more, and then it was like, okay, follow-up shots. And I was like, man, this is a whole nother ballgame. Like,
yeah,
making sure your sights actually like
are still
rebound
realigned.
back. Yeah.
Trigger press is, you have follow through on your trigger, and, you're not just slapping the trigger. And there's a lot that goes into it. And that's the thing. You shoot until the threat's been stopped. So follow-up shots need to be part of your, part of your skill base. Like, you just need to be able to do it. So then once you've warmed up, there's other warm-up things you can do, just whatever, and you can tailor your warm-up to whatever your focus is going to be. So kind of the body of what you're going to work on would be what we like to call the focus. So like, it's the main thing you want to work on, and it could literally be whatever. It could be like, for today's example, we're going to use draw stroke. So your focus is you want to be faster out of the holster and on target. So, working on draw stroke efficiency, there's some really good drills out there for that. There's one that comes from Haley Strategic that we like a lot, where you start basically at 5 seconds, and the timer, you set your par time on a shot timer for 5 seconds. You go to the you go to the gun, draw from the holster, and you've got to utilize that entire 5 seconds until you're at the very end of your presentation. You're planting that shot, but that whole process is taking you 5 seconds,
which is a long
It's
time.
a long time. And
it feels even longer when you're doing it. Like, when you actually run through the drill, you're like, man, this is taking eternity.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of difficult to go that slow.
Yeah. But the whole point is that you're doing all the movements perfectly.
Yeah.
And you want to try to do everything perfectly.
Yeah. And I think it's incredibly important to focus on, all the individual steps of your draw stroke through the longer periods, because obviously as the drill goes, we cut down in time, and then that's when you're actually putting everything into real time motion.
Yep. Yeah, and then you take the time away as you go. So it starts at 5, do it at 4 seconds, get reps at 5 seconds, get reps at 4 seconds, get reps at 3, 2, down to 1. Now you're in sub-second territory. And it's amazing. Like, we've implemented it in some of our classes and stuff before. And it's incredible seeing just in a short time where students, and
usually in that iteration, they're within like either just right above a second or sub-second just off of that alone, because they've basically created shortcuts. in their process of like, okay, I know exactly how to do this. I've been doing this for however many shots, and you're not going through a ton of shots doing that either.
Yeah, you're making everything very repetitive, and that's I tell a lot of people. It's the repetitiveness that you want. It's those habits, those great habits. That's what helps you as a shooter, and it creates better learning habits as well.
Yeah,
and you're talking about shortcuts. That's key. Learning. I can be quicker and more accurate if I just kind of did it this way, and that's what those. What this drill, Jacob, you're talking about is learning each movement perfectly. Right, and I like that drill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to do too. I mean, if you have a shot timer that'll do par times, then you just set the par time on it. You'll get a beep that'll initiate the
and
draw.
You just count it, almost like you guys did it when you guys jumped out of airplanes.
Yeah.
I actually did count, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at counting in seconds.
Well, there you go, Airborne.
Dude, I was scared, man. I'm scared of heights, dude. I hated it, and I was terrified of my chute not opening.
I was always scared of being a toad jumper. I did not want to be a toad jumper.
They just recently had one. I think it was in Bragg. I don't know if y'all saw that video or not. Yeah, they just had it. They
cut him loose.
No, they pulled him in.
Oh,
he was conscious too. That I thought they were going to get cut. I watched the whole video right before I came up here. He was being being towed by a 17, a C-17.
It happens in Bragg for
17s. They almost always try to recover you because they have the toad jumper recovery system or whatever in those. And I think some C-130s do as well. But
sidetracked it.
Yeah, tangent.
Tandem.
No, I'm just kidding. So getting another good drill is the bill drill, and bill drill is basically 5 rounds on target within 2 seconds. And bill drill from holster, I think, is an awesome way to practice your efficiency.
That's a good follow up after the one that we just talked about too.
Yeah,
because you've made those shortcuts, but then it's like, okay. You talked about it earlier. You're going to continue shooting at your whatever threat you have until he's no longer a threat, and usually that means that you're going to, especially if you're carrying. I know 9mm takes lungs out and stuff like that, but you got to shoot some more than once. Yeah, more than likely.
So they have more than one lung, so
yeah.
So you got to at least shoot them twice.
Yeah.
And if you haven't trained and you're not good at shooting their lungs, then yeah. No, but seriously. Bill drills are important because you're adding, follow-up shots after your draw stroke, which is cool.
Yeah, and if you can breeze a bill drill, which again has a par of 2 seconds is the standard on it. If you can go from concealment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds on target in
2 seconds,
and actually it's actually 6 rounds.
Yeah, 6 rounds.
Sorry, it's 6 rounds. When I just counted in my head was like, fire again. But yeah, it's 6 rounds on target. And I apologize. 6 rounds on target in 2 seconds from the holster, from concealment. If you can do that, you're smoking somebody.
We like to do it on.
It's really good.
The 6-inch gongs. Is that what we usually run ours on?
Yeah. And it's actually to be an instructor, it's one of our like standards. You got to be able to show that you can do it, which we all need to go out there and requal because I don't know if I can anymore, dude. I'm a little rusty.
Dude,
I haven't got to shoot as much,
man.
Oh yeah, you gotta re-up on them, but
you gotta make sure you know what you're doing.
And you don't need to get it in 2 seconds. I think it's important I want to point out that that's the goal. That should be your goal. And again, when you get that goal, I want to make that point again. You're not done. Now let's do it in 1.5 seconds.
Absolutely.
Which
you're never done.
You're ripping if you're doing that.
Yeah,
dude. But yeah,
you got that Colton finger, dude.
Yeah, dude, our buddy Colton, man, he can rip that trigger, cracks us up.
Dude, I have so many people when they come out and shoot with it. I mean, it just happened recently too, which is funny. But so many people go, has he got something going on in that gun?
Nope,
like
that's his
he
finger.
thinks they think he's got something shady going on, like
some kind of mechanical
some NFA like sneaky
Yeah.
shenanigans going on. But
like, nope.
I'm like, no, dude, that's his finger. And Ed was the last person that did it, and he goes, dude, that is crazy. He's like, I don't even want to try to imagine him with what are those stupid triggers
The
that
binaries?
Yeah, the binaries.
Oh, he's
like,
ran him before he override.
Yeah, I was about to say. I told him. I said he would override it 100%.
Yeah. I override those things all the time, but even the new one, which is supposed to
I
keep
hate
you
'em.
from doing it. I'll sit there and I'll just be pulling slack trigger, and I'm like, get this thing away from me. Anyways, yeah, dude.
I was gonna say with a handgun, it sounds like it's like
oh yeah,
it's like the tempo of like a 240. Is
yeah,
like what
it
reminds
is
me of.
about. It actually is. He's fast. It's crazy, and it's funny because he's a big guy too. So he
Real
just
big guy.
sucks up all the recoil. So you just see like the front of his gun just like. You're just like, dang, dude. But yeah, it's good times.
But going back to the statement you said, if just because you're a fast shooter doesn't mean you're a good shooter. He's not. When he starts ripping like that, he definitely loses a little bit of accuracy.
Yeah, that balance tips towards the speed a little more than the accuracy.
Yeah,
But
I mean, he can keep it in like on
yeah.
on a close target. He can keep it tight, but like when he starts pushing it, he's not able to just.
I mean, that's what training's for, though.
Exactly.
that's
Yeah,
what he's doing.
And you should push yourself beyond your failure point. You need to know where it's at.
Yeah, I
And
wish I
training
could
on the
shoot like
range is
that.
the time to do it. That's the time to figure out where you're at. Yeah, don't stay in your comfort zone. You should go beyond it. And the more you go beyond it, the better you'll get. And you should
I
constantly
don't know
push
if my
past
finger will
it.
ever get that fast though.
With time, dude.
I've tried to catch him and I just get. I'm like
Get the stutter.
I'm probably like the slowest shooter in our group, dude.
I don't know. I'll probably, I'll
like
take your word for
with
your
follow
money.
ups. You're saying?
with follow
I
ups.
was gonna say you're pretty quick at like out of the holster and with
Well,
reloads.
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
I'm good on my initial shot, but and I'm decent, but I'm just not like I just watch like you're faster than me on follow up shots, and Colton's way faster than me, and I'm like, man.
Colton is easily
But
the fastest.
like,
on
going back
follow-up shots.
going back to what you're saying. Everyone's got their strengths and weaknesses, and it's cool because that's what's good about training with other people is you're trying to catch them. You're like you dog.
Yeah.
Like every time I think I'm going to get good, he's like, usually that's another problem with Colton is like when we're consistently training and I'm like, oh, I'm getting better at it. So is he.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, I can't catch him ever.
Yeah.
I got to like sneak in some training days or something.
It's good though. It's good stuff. But yeah, I mean, back on that bill drill again, these are just examples of drills. There's a ton. And this is why I think it's really important to go a big part of training, which we're talking today's focus is more about training on your own and training with others. But I really think it's important to seek out professional training. Like get it from instructors who are better than you, people you've vetted. You're going to learn drills too doing that. You're going to go and
that kind of goes off the same thing that Andrew was just saying, where he was saying that, train with people that are better than you, and then also train with people that aren't as good as you, so you can teach them. Well, that's the same concept is learned by going and taking classes. You learn stuff, and then you can bring that back to your people. And I'm not saying that you need to just regurgitate the information. I think if you think it's a good enough class, you should encourage your friends to go take that class as well. Because if that instructor is giving good information, then you should try to promote the instructor. I think, obviously, that's part of business, but I'm saying. If I'm going to go take a class and I'm going to come shoot with you guys and I learn something that's really cool, and it's like, man, makes a ton of sense. Let's see how it works for you guys because it worked really well for me.
yeah.
Why not? Why wouldn't you try it?
Was it
with everyone?
A while ago? I think it was actually one of those shooting groups that we were in. I can't remember which one, but I'll always remember a guy saying, there's no such thing as bad range time. It's because if something didn't really work for you, you now know another way to teach someone else.
Yeah.
Like it might not necessarily work for you, or it maybe did. Now you can go out and teach that as well. But I'm pretty biased when I shoot. I like to tell people to shoot like how I shoot. But when I start to learn all of these other different techniques, and when I realize that the way that I'm trying to teach a student, maybe they're not getting it, or it's just not kind of computing with them. I do know these other ways of kind of saying it or doing it and stuff like that. So I just remember, I don't think I'll ever forget that guy saying that there's no such thing as bad range time. I'm sure you can take that with a grain of salt though. But you're constantly learning even the things that aren't well for you that might be well for someone else.
Right. No, absolutely. I think it's super important to constantly push yourself, like we were saying. Implement these new things you've learned, like what you just got done talking about. it doesn't really matter. Those are just a couple examples of things you can do. And this can be applied to whatever your focus is. Just to kind of round out, I guess, like the training outline that we're kind of using as an example. Another things you can work on that I always like to touch on are mechanics, like just working on reloads, malfunctions, anything that's involved with like mechanical operations on the guns, and then also like manipulation.
Yeah, and you can do a lot of that stuff with not burning through a whole lot of ammo. Reloads, you can do 1-to-1s, or you can do, we call it mystery bags, where you have
that's still one of my
your
favorite
buddy
drills.
Or you load up a random amount of ammo, and I mean you can tell on the weight of the gun. You're like, okay, I know roughly where I'm going to run out of ammo, but you still don't know where you're going to run out of ammo.
Yeah. If you want to get real mean too, you can
add
throw in
snap
dummy
caps.
rounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
You add snap caps into the mystery mag drill. That's some training.
Yep. So then, you can do that. I like to do target transition drills too. That's super important because it may not just be a one-on-one situation if you have to pull your firearm. You might have multiple threats. So, it's important to, track with your eyes, because a lot of people, they'll try to pivot like a tank and they just bypass the target or don't go far enough, and it's like, sweet. So working on that kind of stuff, there's a ton of stuff you can do, but knowing all your different malfunctions that you can have with your firearm is incredibly important, knowing how to clear each individual one and kind of the steps of diagnosing it, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. And then kind of the final thing that I want to touch on for as far as a little training day, and it's something that we're pretty passionate about here, and not a lot of people do this, and you might be caught off guard, but implement medical into your EDC training.
So key.
Yep.
Like if you think you have a chance of possibly having to make holes, you better have a plan to fill them, because
because you can train all
no-brainer.
day long, but if someone comes up and shoots you, like I just watched a video today of a guy in a store. Guy runs up, shoots the guy. He falls over. He kind of comes up on the guy to try to potentially try to take a wallet off of him or something. The guy's just kind of laying there, and then all of a sudden he pulls a gun and shoots the dude a bunch of times. The guy falls over. I don't remember who shared it, but I was watching it literally today, and I was like, "Dang!" So that guy still ended up, the guy that was the citizen that just happened to be concealed carrying or whatever he had, still ended up winning, but he got shot.
Yeah, he has to fix now.
At least more than likely. I can't really tell in the video. It's kind of bad quality, but it looks like he got shot in the video.
Yeah.
So being able to fix yourself, and the same thing applies. It could not be a gunfight, but it could be a guy who tries to come up and stab you. I've seen videos of guys just getting stabbed weirdly for no reason. And it's like, if someone comes up and stabs me, if Reggie comes up and stabs me right now, there's nothing stopping the fact that I'm going to have,
You're still going to have that wound.
Yes, I can draw a gun and just drop him right there, but I'm still going to be bleeding out. So know how to fix yourself.
For sure.
That's key.
And have the equipment to fix yourself, because if you don't carry anything, then I mean, you can improvise, but it's like most improvised medical equipment is trash. So
yeah, for sure. Have the right tools for the job and understand how to use those tools. Seek out, again, professional training. You need to have professional training for medical too. It's a big one. So, but yeah, I mean, that pretty much wraps up the outline side of it. I think we'll end up getting to a point where we just kind of
say a bunch of the same stuff.
Yes,
over and over again.
Just get super repetitive.
It's like I'm really trying to drill this point in when we've probably already drilled the point in.
Or just like the drill bit's just running all the way through whatever it's been through. So yeah, but get out there, get training, train with professionals, train with like-minded individuals, push yourself, train regularly, make it part of your life. If you choose to carry every day, then that's part of what you do now. And training with whatever you choose to carry and your whole setup, all that is just should be a part of what you do.